Welcome back to the Secondary Science Simplified podcast and our series where I am interviewing full-time science teachers all month long and just hearing their stories and their tips so that I can share them with you all. And I'm so excited today to introduce you to Macee Huseman, who I feel like I had so much in common with. Macee is from Nazareth, Texas, where she returned home to teach high school science after graduating from West Texas A&M University with a Bachelor's of Science degree in biology. She married her college sweetheart, and they have 3 children. She just finished her 12th year teaching science, and since she is at a small school, she is the science department. Her main courses are biology, IPC, chemistry, physics, and anatomy and physiology, but she has also taught 8th grade science, technology applications, and a PE class. In 2017, she presented at Core Academy at Jacksonville State University in Alabama, where she was a part of their Investing in Innovation Core Grant National Research Project. In 2024, she presented at Texas Tech University's Turfgrass Management Workshop in Amarillo. For the past 2 years, she has been a part of Dr. Young's Turfgrass Management Grant with the FDA and Texas Tech University to develop a turfgrass science curriculum for high school science students. She loves her family, science education, learning new things, and wood crafts. She loves to organize and is an enthusiastic, reliable planner and a hardworking team player. Don't you just wish she was one of your coworkers after you hear that? Last school year, y'all, she has 6 preps, and she will most likely have the same this upcoming school year. So I had to ask her all about managing all of those preps and having work-life balance. I think if you teach at a really large school, you have way more students, but you often get less preps. And then when you teach at a really small school, whether it's private or public, you can be the only person in your department and you have 6 preps like Macee. So I had to ask her about her experience with all that and how she does it. Also, because of how many different subjects she's taught, I was able to ask her some content-specific questions. Specifically, we touched on biology, physics, and anatomy, and also just how she engages her students. We talked grading, classroom management, and learning how to say no. One of my favorite things she shared is a hack for managing and just dealing with students who have very different math abilities, but are in the same classroom for a quantitative science like physics. So if you can relate to that, keep your ears open because it is such a great tip. I just enjoyed talking with her, honestly, so much. And so I hope you feel the same way after you hear our conversation. So without further ado, here's my interview with Macee Huseman. This is Secondary Science Simplified, a podcast for secondary science teachers who want to engage their students and simplify their lives. I'm Rebecca Joyner from It's Not Rocket Science. As a high school science teacher turned curriculum writer, I am passionate about helping other science teachers love their jobs, serve their students, and do it all in only 40 hours a week. Are you ready to rock the time you spend in your classroom and actually have a life outside of it? You are in the right place, teacher friend. Let's get to today's episode. Hi, Macee. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm so good, and I'm so excited to talk to you because I feel like we have a lot of common experiences with your teaching and being basically your entire science department.
Yes, exactly. I'm so excited to be here.
All right, well, I know you're going to offer so much to listeners, so let's just dive right in. You've taught so many different things, but you said in your application biology was your favorite, so I'd love to kind of hear why you feel that way.
Yes, biology has always been my favorite subject. I loved biology in high school, and then it was my major in college, and now it's just my favorite subject to teach. I just love life science. I love knowing what we came from and how everything works together. I guess I'm a nerd because I just think cells are so cool. I think when you really start to learn what just one cell is capable of doing, it's just amazing.
It really blows your mind.
Yes, it does. Yeah. I think my favorite concept in biology would be genetics. I think genetics, they're predictably unpredictable. And I kind of like that puzzle aspect of it.
I love heredity and teaching all these patterns, but then being well, everything there's an exception. So then the kids are like, what the heck?
Yes, exactly.
But I'm if that is so the nature of science, it's not even funny. We have patterns, but then there's always outliers and exceptions and all those things.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, well, since you love biology, I have to ask you because there are a lot of people listening who are not biology people. They're more physical science or more quantitative science based, and so they get landed biology and they're like, "This is boring." Because I do think the life sciences tend to lean a little bit more lecture heavy or direct instruction heavy, and so how do you handle, like, direct instruction? How do you balance not having too much lecture? How are you engaging your students when there is a lot of content in biology, whereas something like physics feels more skills-based?
Yes, I would agree with that. So this is actually something that I struggled with for a long time because I could lecture about biology all class period every day.
Because if you love it, it feels exciting, like, it doesn't seem
Yes.
boring. Yeah.
Yes, but the kids don't think so. So I think it's important to give them something to like break up that lecture, whether it's like a practice question built in or like a turn and talk, something that they can like digest, like let that information sink in. Because there's also a lot of big terms in biology. And so we really need to like get it to where the kids can understand that. So I like to give them something to think about to like break the notes or the lectures up. And then some days we just have like a really short lecture or I mean just like 5 minutes of notes and then like a lab. And the kids really love the labs, the hands-on. But I also try to really have structure in my classroom. I think when the kids know what to expect, then they feel safe and they learn better. So if they know like it's lecture day or it's lab day, I think that helps them too.
Do you keep an agenda on your whiteboard?
No, I try to like structure my weeks similar.
Oh, so what does that look like?
So I will try to do like a lecture or some kind of practice like that on Mondays and Tuesdays and Fridays, and then our labs on Wednesdays and Thursdays.
I love that. I love a rhythm. So that's awesome that
Yeah.
works for you. So, a natural thing that I think all students experience, especially adolescents, but I think it's grown so much in the post pandemic years, is just like the level of apathy and a general like lack of excitability. And I feel like every teacher who emails me or reaches out in my DMs is asking about that. So I just love to hear from other people and give other people. I like to make other people's voices loud too. So I would love to hear from you so people can hear it from someone besides me. How are you exciting your students and getting them to care? And maybe if they don't care about biology or whatever you're teaching, at least like engaging in it if they don't like it.
I think you're right. This is so challenging in today's world. I mean, with cell phones, they have instant entertainment at their fingertips. So, like, that makes it real hard to, like, entertain or excite them in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So, I definitely think the best way to do that in the classroom is hands on learning.
Mm-hmm.
In physics, I have like a real big 6 weeks project at the end of the 6 weeks for all my students. And then, like, since I'm in a small school, I have the same students from freshman year to senior year.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
So these underclassmen are getting to see these big physics projects be built every day. They get to see these big roller coasters when we're learning about energy transformations. And then that's something that they look forward to. And of course, they want to do it bigger and better than the class above them. So I have to change the specs a little bit each year to keep it challenging. But I try to do some big fun labs that those kids can see, that are left out on the lab table and they can look forward to that. I also think it's important to keep the labs or the projects exciting and relevant to what's interesting to those students. Some labs are just important to do each year. We need to learn how to use a microscope and look at a cell through a microscope. But some labs can be tweaked to the interests of the students. And I feel like that helps a lot when they can relate with it.
Absolutely. I love what you said about kind of looking ahead because when I taught at a private school, I had them 8th, ninth, 10th grade, and then sometimes for AP Bio, like when they were older. But I'll never forget my ninth grade biology always has ecosystem in a bottle. And when my 8th graders were ninth graders and I went on maternity leave, it was right before ecosystem in a bottle. And they were like, are we just not going to get to do it? Because we've been looking forward to this. And so I had adopted my oldest, so I wasn't like physically recovering. And so I came in when he was like 4 weeks old and I wore him in an like a little, baby carrier. And I was like, we're doing ecosystem in a bottle. Cause like, it's true. They look ahead and they're like, it's my turn to do
Yes.
the big roller coaster lab or whatever.
Yeah, and if I change something, like, for the lower classmen and they get to do a project, like, my older students are like, "Hey, how come we never got to do that?"
You're like, "Sorry, I'm coming up with new ideas. Back
Yes.
off." Okay, so you mentioned when you were talking about apathy, just like the cell phone thing, and I know it's like so over. We talk about it all the time, but it really is so true. Just their brains have changed because they're so used to instant gratification, and I think that makes them less resilient. But speaking of the cell phones, what is your cell phone policy? Like, do you have one or how do you manage that?
So, our school has a cell phone policy that I followed for years. I didn't love it, but it worked. It was fine. They're not allowed to have their cell phones on in the classroom. So, if they go off, we take them up and turn them into the office.
Mhm.
And then a parent has to come pay $15, I think, to get their phone back.
Which is so private school coded. Like, my private school did the exact same thing. I'm like, if they had tried that in my public school, like,
I
that won't
know.
work.
I think since we're such a small school, we can get away with
Right,
it.
right, right.
But this year, I actually changed it up a little bit. I have like a filing cabinet right by the door when they walk in the classroom. And so I just told him, when you walk in the door, you're putting your phone up on that filing cabinet. And then, it's out of sight. Like, I'm not going to touch it. Nobody else is going to touch it. It's just fine right there. And like, my biggest class size this year was 19. So it wasn't a huge deal. And there were a couple other teachers that were doing that same procedure in their classroom too. So the kids, they took to it really well, which I was worried about. And at first, just that metal filing cabinet and those phones, the notifications, it blew my mind
Mm.
how many times those phones were going off in
On
class.
your metal filing cabinet just buzzing.
Yes. And I was like, no wonder y'all couldn't focus on anything.
Mm,
Because, even when my watch goes off, I'm like, oh,
yeah,
what is,
yeah.
it's just right there. Let
I'm
me
like,
see.
"Oh, my sister just did a workout." I'm like, "Didn't need to know that information in this moment."
Exactly. And that's what they're doing, it's in their pocket or whatever. They can still feel it vibrate. And so then, like, I had to, like, change it up, put some fabric down so that didn't make so much noise. And if one, like, would ding or something, I just ignored it. The kids got to where they ignored it. And so they knew, like, for 50 minutes, I'm not gonna have my phone, and it's gonna be okay. And it really went over very, very well.
That's awesome. So what happened if you ever did find them with their phone? What did you just go with the school policy?
Then I went with the school
Okay.
policy.
That seems like a good compromise.
I told them, "If it's up on the filing cabinet and it goes off, we're gonna ignore it. But if it's in your pocket and it goes off, I'm taking it."
Yeah.
And, yeah, so they did really well with it. I was shocked at how easy everybody adjusted to it, and then how the focus in the classroom changed when they didn't have that on their person.
It's so true. Okay, let's switch gears back to the content. So this could be biology related or really any subject since you have so much experience. Is there a concept you're like, I feel like I teach that really well or maybe in a unique way? And if so, would you share that with us?
So, like I mentioned before, I love genetics, and I've always heard this saying, like, "When teachers love to teach, students love to learn." And, like, I can truly see that during my genetics unit. I love all the sciences. I'm a big nerd, but I enjoy genetics the most. And so I can see my students learning faster and enjoying it more, just like I am.
Hmm.
I love protein synthesis. I love genetic coding. It's like that puzzle aspect of it. And then I guess that's why I like genetics so much, just Punnett squares, codon charts. And so I think that's a real fun unit to do. When we do Punnett squares, I try to do something like completely random, like Minion genetics or Harry Potter genetics, like something crazy, but we can still apply the technique and use and practice it.
That's so fun. I feel like there's always like good ways to bring in pop culture there too.
Yes.
Okay, any must do lab recs, like ones that you feel like have a great ROI or return on investment? Because I think a lot of teachers, especially those who are listening who relate to you and are like, I have so many preps, labs are really overwhelming. So they want to make sure the ones they're doing are really worth it.
Yeah, I agree. I think your Stop the Spread lab is
Mm.
wonderful. My students love doing that. It's just fun. Their faces light up when it turns pink or not.
They love to see who's infected.
Yes, who did it? Who
Yes.
started
When we
it?
trace it back, they're like, of course it was you. You're like,
Yes, it is a fun lab. And I think the takeaway is great. I mean, they're like, "Oh, okay. That's what you mean," when they can actually see it happen.
That's how I feel about the antibiotic resistance one with the beads. Like, it's not
Yes,
as salacious as the fluid swapping of the stop the
right.
spread, but they actually understand. Like, it's such a clear visual of like, oh, look what happens mathematically if you
Yes.
don't do this.
And, I do that with both my biology and my A&P class.
Yeah.
And they both love it, as freshmen and seniors. They both love doing it and seeing the results.
Hmm.
So, I also love your natural selection lab with
Oh,
the
yeah.
different beak types and
Yes,
the
it's so
sunflower
fun.
seed. Oh, yeah. We move all the desks and they get on the floor and
It's just so perfect for, like, freshmen too. Like, I
yes,
just and it mine always fell in the spring, so it's always like, we're all getting a little crazy, so this is the perfect time to just get rowdy in class, and they love
yes,
it.
exactly. They do. I think they get a lot from it. They're having fun. They don't even realize that they're learning. But then when they get back to their lab report, they're like, oh, that light bulb effect is that's the best part of teaching, right?
I know, it's so fun. I love seeing their excitement when they're like they don't think it's relevant, and they realize how relevant it actually is.
Yes. In IPC, your candy labs, there's several different ones,
Mhm,
but they get to have candy in class. So
mhm.
they're like, this is awesome.
I know, I laughed because when I wrote my chemistry curriculum, I realized at the end of it that in my stoichiometry unit, there's literally 3 different instructional resources that involve eating something. And I was like, "I guess we're just gonna eat our feelings this whole unit." But, like, it
That's all
just kind
right.
of that's how it came, and so it worked out, but I'm like, "You know what? It is, like that is such a simple way to engage students with food, and it really is, like, so fun."
It is. They love it.
Even if you have to buy a couple special lab things or whatever, go to a like, if you need to go to a cafeteria to do it because you don't wanna do it on your lab tables, like,
Yes.
think it's
Yeah.
worth it. Any just executional tips for lab days to make them go a little smoother? I know you don't that's like one of the give or takes. Like, I feel like when you're at a small school, you have a gajillion preps, but you at least have smaller classes typically versus larger school, you may have less preps, but you have like 30 people. So yours may not be as crazy when you have smaller classes, but any tips just for making lab days not stressful?
Yeah, I would say just being organized, and sometimes that's hard, but it really makes a huge difference. If you can prep early, like if you can plan a week in advance and make sure that you have everything for that lab, I'd say that's huge. There's nothing worse than like trying to get ready for a lab the morning of, and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have what I need.
Right.
So I think if you could prep early and plan to make sure everything's there, then the day of it just kind of makes things flow easier. The other thing I would say is put it in the kids' hands, put it in the students' hands, like give them clear instructions ahead of time, like what you expect, and then clear instructions for how to clean up.
Mhm.
That's the worst part is like you have to clean up everything. But the students are there to help do that, after they've done their lab, they're capable of cleaning up after themselves. And I think that is huge. We have some labs where we're like the bell's ringing and we're out of time. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll clean up on my own. And that just like ruins the whole lab for me. I'm like, oh, why did I do this to myself?
I know. And I feel like especially at a small school, it's easy to be like, "Okay, who's going to an elective after this? Can you just stay for
Yes.
5 minutes and I'll write you a note?" Or I'll call, your
Yes,
band
totally.
teacher and just say, "Help me." I feel like one of my refrains that I use all the time with my children now is like, "There's 3 of you and there's 1 of me." But I use it in my classroom too, like, "There's 25 y'all and 1 of me." So, like,
Yeah.
if each of you just do a tiny bit, it helps so much.
And I mean, sometimes they might grumble about it, but kids really are happy to help.
Mhm. Hey, I always tell my own children because my kids, they must have gotten this from their father. They hate putting their clothes in a hamper. And I'm always like, "Your future life partner will thank you one day that you don't just step out of your clothes and leave your pants with 2 holes in the ground, or whatever." So we're just creating contributors to society this way.
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
so I gotta know. We're recording this, which is actually normally I like record so far in advance. This is actually very timely. We're recording this in the summer. It's airing in the summer. But how many preps did you have last year, and how many are you anticipating this upcoming school year? It might be the same.
I had 6 preps last year
And one planning period.
and 1 planning period, yes.
Wow. And you think that's gonna be the same next year?
Most likely.
Okay, so you're the perfect person to ask this question. How are you doing it? And how many hours are you working, and how are you able to like have a life outside of, I mean, every single period is different.
Oh, yeah. So this past year, I just had biology that repeated itself, and then everything else was different. And so I just finished my 12th year teaching, and I'd like to say it gets easier, but it doesn't. I mean, this year was so hard. I don't know what about it. In Texas, our TEKS changed for K through 12 science, and I don't know if it was that
Hmm.
or this year was hard. Work-life balance is hard. So, my first several years teaching, I would be at school till dark every night.
Hmm.
But I didn't have a husband and 3 kids then. So, it was okay. I could do that, but now when school's out, I want to go home and enjoy my family.
Hmm.
And it's hard to leave work at work, but I've had to make myself learn how to do that. So, I think that It's Not Rocket Science curriculum helped a ton. And, with the student packets, I'm making copies once per unit and then it's done. I don't have to, I'm not making copies constantly all the time. And that's huge. Another thing is to stay organized. So, like, everything's in binders, I have it right there if I need it. I keep things from years past. So, I'm not reinventing the wheel,
Right.
which I feel like as teachers, sometimes we do that to ourselves. So I try to not reinvent the wheel each year. Just use what I have done in the past, maybe tweak it a little bit. And one thing that's really hard is I can't let myself procrastinate. Like,
Mm.
during my planning period, I have to work. Like, sometimes I feel like I need that sign on my door that's like, please do not enter. I have no self-control and I will talk to
Right.
you. But I have to, like, bear down, make myself work during my planning period so I don't have to do it at home later.
I know. I used to literally turn the lights off, and I had my desk like kind of in the furthest corner from the door. So you had to like really look hard through the little tiny door window to see if I was
Yes.
there. And I would work in the dark because the hardest thing for me was like students would go to the bathroom right by my classroom and then just like pop their head in and say, hey.
Yeah.
And I'm like, get out of here. Go to your English class, you know?
Yes.
Okay, but what about grading? Because that's so many preps. How are you managing the grading?
That's hard.
Hmm.
I I've shortened a lot of my assignments, so it's not so much grading. I typically have a student aide, and so
Good.
if it's something that's like multiple choice, and I've been really fortunate with my student aides too, that it's somebody that I've had and it's one of my top students.
Right.
So I can trust them and be like, okay, you've had this, you know what you're doing. That helps me out a ton. I don't know that I could make it without somebody helping with the
No,
grading.
I think student aides or teachers aides or whatever you want to call them is like the greatest hack for admin. That's like free ways to help your teacher. All you have to do is like
Yes.
put this program into place. And once it's in place, it just runs. Like
Yes. Yeah,
it's
it's
the
great.
best.
Another thing is like Google Forms.
Mm.
If you can put the answers in where it grades it for you, that's huge. In biology, I try to have more writing
Hmm.
because they have writing on their STAR test.
Right.
So that takes a little more time. It's just another thing that I like cannot procrastinate on. If I just do it, then it's fine. But sometimes I'm like procrastinate a week and then it's all built up and it is bad. So
That is truly the worst. Okay, so you mentioned your STAR exam, which also you said TEKS. I have literally said TEX in my head for the last 10 years that I've been reading the Texas Science Standards. So,
that's fine.
wow. Okay, so TEKS, you learn something new every day. Also, it's so funny you said the thing about the changing standards because, like, I feel like when states rewrite standards, it's always like a 3 to 4 year process, and then different districts start at different times. So I'm like, I feel
Yes.
like I have heard about these new standards for so long. I'm like, oh, so we're finally doing them. Awesome.
Yes. Yeah. I think like they actually were adopted in 2020.
Literally, people be like the new ones, and I'm like, are they new from that? And it's like, oh no,
Yeah.
no, no, the same ones.
We just like last year was the year we had to implement them.
Yes.
So
Well, and that's why I'm always, when anyone, if you're listening to this, I always like, I'm happy to read anyone's standards, but I'm always like, please send them to me because you may just refer to TEKS now that I know how to say it, but I want to know which TEKS are we talking about because
right.
some districts are still behind or whatever. Or you say the new TEKS and I'm like, the 2020? Anywho,
Yeah.
okay. So you have this end of course exam, though, your STAR exam for biology. So I would love to hear how you mentioned there's a lot of writing on it, but how else are you reviewing for it? Are you trying to leave in like buffer periods for it at the end of the year? Do you do some like review as we go, or how does that work?
I truly believe in spiral reviews
Mhm.
all year long. I'll teach the first week of school, we're starting spiral reviews. What did we talk about yesterday? And then as time goes on, what did we talk about yesterday? What did we talk about last week? What did we talk about last month? So then when we get to April, right before the STAR test, it's not like I'm pulling like remember way back in August,
Totally.
but they've seen it all throughout the year because of those spiral reviews. And then I try to leave about 10 days before the STAR test to review like one topic per day. And I just have like a big spiral review over that topic. And then I do that on Google Forms. So I get instant feedback and I can grab that student right away and be like, hey, let's look at this question right here and fix that misconception right away. And I feel like we can get through that in those 10 days. So this year, I just felt like my kids were super prepared for the test because of those spiral reviews. It helped them so much. And I had 100% passing rate. So,
That's awesome.
yeah, I truly believe those spiral reviews throughout the whole year are huge.
So are you taking out time? Like, when would you be integrating those? Or is this just kind of like a casual, it's like a rhythm in your classroom, like it's just we're always talking about it? Or are you doing it like after every unit test?
On lecture days, I have a warm up, and then the warm up is like a spiral, is where the spiral review is. And then we'll lecture, and then we have like a quick exit pass, which is just over what we talked about that day.
Okay, awesome. And then are you using the test that came with the It's Not Rocket Science biology curriculum for your units?
Yes,
Do you use the cumulative sections on those, or have you had to beef those up, or have the cumulative sections been helpful for the retaining the information?
they have been very helpful.
Because that's another thing I tell people all the time. Like, biology builds so easily, but if you can just keep testing them too on it, I think. Oh, and that's why I like to have the biology test separated. I don't do this for every curriculum, but I like biology separated by concept. So then it's really clear for those end of year exams.
Yes,
Like, these are
exactly.
the topics you like did great on the cells test, except for cell transport. You clearly didn't know that, you know?
Right.
It's so much easier to kind of.
To see that data, to get that data and see where they're at. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, that's awesome, though. I'm so excited for your 100% pass rate. That's great. Okay, do you have any good like classroom management techniques or hacks?
Structure.
Mm.
I
It's
think
so true.
structure is so important. My first year teaching, I heard at a workshop, I heard somebody say, like, structure is where it's at. Like, let these kids know what is going to happen when they walk into your classroom. And I've kind of lived by that. They feel more comfortable knowing what is going to happen. And I think they learn better. It also helps me to
Yeah.
plan and prepare. And it helps me to stay organized and keep my brain organized.
Yes.
And I think that's the ultimate thing. If the teacher is on track and not stressed and flustered, the kids won't be as much either.
Well, and you're so right. They like know what to expect. Like, I think back to when I was in high school. You knew which classes you were going into that were just going to be a joke or that you could like goof
Yes.
off, and you know the ones that you have to take seriously. And it's all about how they set the tone.
Oh, yeah. And I'll talk to other teachers and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this student," and I'm like, "They don't act like that in my classroom." But I think it's the structure. I think it's they know that I'm strict, they know they're not gonna get by with it, and they know what to expect, like, "Oh, today's lecture day, today's lab day." I think it helps tremendously.
That's a good tip too. Like, if you feel like you're struggling with a student and someone else says they're not, like, go observe that teacher and see what they're doing differently or
Yeah.
how they're, engaging with that student. I think you can learn a lot from other people. Okay, you mentioned you teach anatomy and physics. So I had a couple of like very niche questions that anatomy and physics teachers sent me. So I wanted to ask you. So first, in anatomy, do you teach landmarks on bones or origins and insertions of muscles? It takes so much time, this teacher said. And are there other things you skip so you have more time to kind of cover all the systems?
So, in my anatomy class, I mean, these are all seniors that we have in our anatomy class. Very first day of school, I just sit down with them and I talk to them like, what is your plan for your future? Like, what are you thinking about going into college to do? Why did you take A&P instead of another science course that you could have taken? And I try to get the feel for them. So if I have students who are thinking about like going into radiology, then I'm going to teach landmarks. I
Mm.
mean, on the bones, and I'm going to go deeper into the skeletal system. Or if I have students wanting to do physical therapy, then I will go deeper in the muscular system.
Mm-hmm.
But if I don't have those students in my classroom, then I won't go as deep into those. And if we don't get to a body system, I have to let it go. I have
Mm-hmm.
to tell myself, like, it's okay. As long as I hit the important ones that they are going to need for their
Mm-hmm.
future, then I feel good about it.
How do you always make time for reproduction or no?
No. I've had a couple students that are really interested in it, and so we went over it. But, when I talk to them, to my kids at the beginning of the year, that's usually the one that they're like, "Oh, do we have to do that?"
That's so funny. Mine are always like, "Can we start with that?" I'm like, "You just wanna hear me say," I don't wanna say it and I don't wanna get an explicit rating on the podcast, but, they just wanna hear me say body terms, and I'm just
I
like,
know.
"Stop."
Well, and I feel like as a biology major from college, like, those terms are just terms to me, like,
Literally.
they don't affect me at all.
My husband was so disturbed when I was using them with our, like, first child that was 2, and I'm like, "What else am I supposed to call it? You married a biology teacher. Like,
Yeah.
what do you expect from
What
me?"
it Yes, and I feel like my freshmen, like, get so embarrassed because
Yes.
I'm just like, "Oh, here we are,"
But it
and
hits different with a senior for sure, but
oh, yes,
I
yes.
really like that idea, though, about especially you said with seniors, like, it's so different if you have upperclassmen and you can have a little bit more flexibility and you don't have an EOC or STAR exam or whatever, so there's no stress of, like, we have to. So I like that you kinda customize it based on their interests. That's fun. That's very thoughtful. Okay, physics question for you. How do you balance wide varieties of math ability? So this teacher said, "I'm talking remedial algebra and Calc BC in the same room," which sounds insane to me. So how are you balancing that?
Yeah, that's tough. I had a little bit of that this past year in physics. I feel like I thought the best way to handle it was to go slow. I mean, even strong math-based students can still get confused in physics, and I'm like, "Guys, physics is hard. Nobody has ever told you physics is easy, so it's okay." But I would just take it slow, I'd break it down, work out my practice problems slowly with the whole class so that I didn't ever lose those low kids. And then sometimes the higher kids would get bored, but I tried to reel them back in. Another thing that I've done in my classroom is I'd partner the kids up high low, which I don't always love. But for this, I would do high low. And like one student was the writer, all they could do was write. And then their partner was the thinker or the speaker.
Mm,
So I'd give them a problem. The thinker speaker had to like talk out the whole problem.
mm.
Like, okay, here's our variables. This is the formula we're going to do. Write that down. Okay, let's plug in this here. And the writer can only write. And so then at the end of the problem, when they get finished, they can discuss it. And so if the writer was the high kid, then they can say, okay, look at this step right here. This is where there was a mistake, where we need to fix that. And then the next problem, they switch. So then the first person will be the thinker, speaker, and the second person will be the writer. And I feel like that really keeps the high kid from being bored, and it gets that interaction where then the low kid doesn't feel like they're low and they're really thinking through those physics problems.
Macy, that is such a hack. I love that. 'Cause it's higher order thinking to be able to explain it. And
Yes.
some of those kids probably are like, "I could just write it out real quick," but they
Uh-huh. Oh,
couldn't
yeah.
explain it. And then the
Yeah.
other student is gonna learn as they're listening and writing, and that's a great idea. I love that.
It works really well with that when you have that big spread in the classroom.
That's great. Alright, so the last question I have to ask you is there a way that you have simplified your life recently?
Learning, learning, and actually doing it to say no.
Mm.
It's hard.
Mhm.
It's really hard, especially in a small school, a tight-knit community, but you can't do everything. And if you stretch yourself so thin, like, you're the one who's gonna lose. And so as my kids have gotten older, as I've become a more experienced teacher, I've learned, like, I have to stand up for myself and say no if it's something I cannot do.
Mhm. I think that's so great. I always have to remind myself no is a complete sentence. 'Cause I'm like, I wanna write a CER statement for why I just said I can't do
Yes.
this. And it's like, you don't have to justify every single thing, you
No, you
know?
don't have to have an excuse. You just have to say no.
I know. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm really grateful for your time.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be on here.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode and my interview with Macee. You can find any links mentioned in the show notes at itsnotrocketscienceclassroom.com/episode 192. And if you would like to reach out to Macee and ask her any questions, you can find her email in the show notes. If you are listening and you've never left a review for the Secondary Science Simplified podcast, I would love to hear from you. You can leave a 5-star rating if you feel so inclined. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, you can also type a little review. And I would love to hear from you, especially if you too have a lot of preps. I'm talking more than 3, especially if you have 6 like Macee. And if you felt encouraged by this conversation, I would love to hear from you. All right, teacher friends, that wraps up today's episode. If you're looking for an easy way to start simplifying your life as a secondary science teacher, head to itsnotrocketscienceclassroom.com/challenge to grab your classroom reset challenge. And guess what? It's totally free. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you here next week. Until then, I'll be rooting for you, teacher friend.